The brothers Wisp. The brothers Wisp, brothers Wisp. The brothers Wisp. The brothers.
You're now listening to Greg. It's the Brothers Wisp.
Hey everybody, this is Greg with the Brothers Wisp number 151, coming to you as always from Texas, the motherland, the home of all of your favorite people. Let's see, there's Davy Crockett, Sam Houston, I think Willie Nelson. I'm not sure. Chuck Norris lives here. He lives actually pretty close to me, so something to be said just for that alone. I think Ted Nugent's here as well. Anyway, having said that, let's get some of the guest introductions out of the way. You know, the most excruciating part. Today from you guys are repping the North pretty hard today. We have Nick Braglio. I said that correct, right? All right. I have screwed that up so many times, bud.
I grew up in Central Illinois. Like most people don't say it right. So it's not, it'll be fine anyway.
Fair enough. And we also have Nick Aroano, which makes this so much more interesting. We have Nick and Nick.
Two Illinois boys representing.
Gotcha.
That's right. Now, would we be considered
Oh, you're
Yanks
absolutely Yankees.
to you, Greg?
Are you kidding me?
Okay. Just want to make sure. The
northern aggression rolls off of you folks. So I'm accustomed to it. I'm always prepared for it. No. All right. So let's get some of the stuff out of the way so that we can get to the good stuff. So we are brought to you by Sonar, a scalable, intuitive, and comprehensive ISP billing and operational support system. Learn more at Sonar.Software. We also scroll down. We have tower coverage. Tower coverage is your RF propagation system to empower your network, real-time data metrics, enable your coverage area, reach your customer base, and more. The industry's best RF propagation mapping system allows website integration for customer sign-up and pre-qualification. Use this data to scientifically plan network expansion and help your WISP succeed. Get a free trial today at towercoverage.com. All right. Read like a champ. I feel accomplished today. So I would announce the new patrons, but we don't have any new ones. So you listeners need to go to patreon.com/brotherswisp so that I can read your name out next go around. And that also gets you access to the patron-only Slack, where both of the Nicks post their newest nudes and have lewd conversations with people. So definitely jump in there for that.
Mostly the latter.
Excellent. So we have probably two of the smartest guys I know on the planet, which that sets the bar high, right? And that's not saying that I know a bunch of dum-dums, right? You guys definitely set the bar high. Overachievers, I would call you guys. Both from a hair perspective, because you're both rocking it, you're looking good, but also from accomplishment perspective. So while we've got you guys, I figured we would talk about some of the things you guys are really interested in. So I've got it arranged so that we have some quicker topics, perhaps not, and then some of the longer stuff at the end, because I know Nick Braglio, Nicky B, you guys have been working on some really interesting stuff that does require some explanation, so I want to leave time for that. But let's start at the start, man. So Router OS version 7 is out. Everybody is slowly starting to play with it, and I am no exception. I just installed 3 days ago, my first router with version 7, and that's because I wanted to get to that juicy ZeroTier stuff and started playing with that. I don't want to get to the ZeroTier stuff yet because that's a little bit later, but recently something came up, and it is how to identify what routes I'm advertising out via BGP, Border Gateway Protocol, to other hosts. And I'm thinking in my head, in version 6, there wasn't a way to identify like what I'm advertising directly to a specific peer, was there?
So there's documentation that has the command that you run to show that. To be honest, so what you're referencing was I think me complaining on the Slack about, hey, how do I do this? Like, this command isn't working, and it was just a command that I yanked out of the Microtik wiki. But I've been on Router OS 7 since I think RC2, and I just turned up an actual production BGP peer on 7.1.1, and my normal go-to with when I'm configuring an eBGP peer is I want to build the config for it, and I want to make sure that I'm announcing the right thing. So basically make sure it's doing what I expect it to do. And I found very quickly that I was unable to do that using the way that I normally do it, which is like look at advertised routes. And lo and behold, I did eventually figure out what I needed to figure out, and I was in fact doing it incorrectly and announcing routes I didn't want to. But thankfully, the upstream peer was filtering them. But there is apparently no way to view that currently on router OS 7. If there is, I would love somebody to tell me what it is. I'm happy to be wrong. I would love it if I was wrong, actually, but I don't think I am.
Which is kind of insane because it was a primary tab on version 6. You just go to advertisements, and it's like, here's everything you're sending out each peer. The fact that that's just not in version 7 is kind of odd.
Yeah.
Well, so you just brought something up. I only use the command line. So I did not look in Winbox or the web interface because I have them disabled. It may be there and not in the CLI, but I would really doubt that. It's usually the other way around.
Yeah, I've noticed
7.
that too. A lot of missing things from Winbox, right, versus the CLI. And like in the Cisco world, I was all CLI. I was always doing CLI. And then MikroTik, slowly it started infecting my brain. Because like the Winbox, it is so fast and so efficient. Like my workflow got so quick with it. But yeah, I always am looking in Winbox first. And now with version 7, like you said, I'm having to fall back to my roots. I'm having to go back to the CLI, which I don't necessarily mind. But for like informational stuff, I really like Winbox. Like Nick Arolano was talking about, you pop open the tab and you just watch advertisements, you watch routes, you watch a thing while you're over here tweaking and tuning. You could just kind of live see it pop up. I used to love that functionality. But
just open several terminals.
Yeah.
Same effect.
I SSH into my jump host, I fire up tmux, I attach to it, and then I've got 4 windows, in one, split pane. But I do like Winbox. I'm not in any way, disparaging that. I just don't run a Windows machine, and the Mac builds for that are, they don't update as frequently. They're kind of slow because they're running an emulation, blah, 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 blah.
Crossover.
So it just isn't quite the same experience, I think, that, someone using the native client would have, unfortunately.
You should check out Crossover for Mac. It's basically like a commercial product. It's like a yearly license for just updates, but it's a wine bottler, and you can install. So I have Winbox. Net install even works. The dude works. As much as I hate the dude, because I daily drive Mac OS.
A wine bottler? Is that something you came up with?
Yeah.
Not at all. No.
I think I've heard of this before. I haven't used it. Like I've got whatever the version that's built that you can get with Homebrew on Mac. Just brew install Winbox or NROL Quaker or whatever it is, and it works. It's just it's slow because it's emulation. Even on my very, very beefy machine, it's just the experience.
How well have you guys
stinks.
adapted to the BGP filters? That's what I hear everybody complaining about. And again, I just installed this, so I have yet to play with BGP.
I really didn't know them very well, but I've done a fair amount of work on pretty much every other platform, so it wasn't terribly different from, let's say, I know some people are probably going to scream when I say this, but like the route policy language in iOS XR, the way that it does if statements and things like that is really... In my mind, they're fairly similar. I know that they're not actually very similar, but like that leap wasn't very hard for me. And it is reasonably documented already.
Yeah, I know. I remember making the change from standard iOS to iOS XR, and that the policy procedure, kind of the if then else stuff, like, oh my gosh, I loved it. Like I instantly was like, yes, this is for me. So any changes I had to make to adjust to it were welcome. So I had no problems with that.
I think the hardest part for people,
I found a limit.
I was just saying the hardest part I think for people is that it's a very cognitive break from 6 to 7. It's completely different. So for programmers, if you have some logic baked in, It's going to make it a lot nicer for automation and building out like more complex filters with kind of less just lines. It's going to provide a lot more tooling for that. But people that are used to V6, I mean, it's a completely different shift. So a lot of people don't like it. I hope they keep it, but it would be kind of hard for them to, I imagine, maintain both styles of maintaining stuff. Everything's a lot more templated across the routing protocols in general. So I think it's a good direction, but it seems like they are wanting to do more training content on their YouTube and go more in depth on stuff. So I wonder if they're going to be focusing on that. Their video content's actually pretty good for the stuff that they've put out so far for the product.
You like that upgrade before Christmas one? Is what you're telling me?
It was so funny.
I could handle about 20 seconds of it at 2x speed, and I was like, yeah, it's not for me.
Yeah, the filtering language is not bad. I do really like the templating. I mean, that's how my brain works anyway. Coming from a very long tenure working on Juniper equipment, that whole like building of the template pieces within the config sort of clicks. I do like that. They've done a lot of work on running in IPv6 only mode, which was kind of not really doable beforehand, but you can get away with it for the most part now. You can put v4 inside of your, you can do the NLRI for v4 inside of a v6 peering. All of the next top stuff works fine, and that was one of the biggest reasons I upgraded to.
Do you feel like this is a move more towards like industry standard as far as like BGP filtering configuration goes?
I think that it is enabling a lot more granular pieces that will indirectly affect how seriously the platform is taken by those that typically blew it off or didn't even know about it before. That's my hot take.
So you feel like it's a move to lend credibility then?
Yeah, I mean, every update that they do to 7, and Nick, you may feel free to disagree with me, but like I feel like every move they make is calculated in such a way that like it's pushing it further into the mainstream of, hey, I could really buy this and run like a national backbone on it, a small country that doesn't need 100 gig or whatever, although I think the 100 gig's probably coming. I think they're really putting a lot of thought into what people are complaining about. Finally, I think that whole like, oh, it's coming in version 7 that everybody's been saying in jest for like a decade is now like, oh shit, it really is coming fast. Like it's here now.
Yeah, because those updates are fast and furious. Like every new kind of release candidate introduces something that is sometimes surprising, or at least I don't know, surprises me. I think some of you guys probably, or at least Andrew Theft seems to have a really good crystal ball about what's coming next. I don't know about you guys, but he seems to really have his pulse on kind of like seeing, like tossing the chicken bones and knowing what's going to come next.
He knows the hardware.
Yeah.
So he knows like where they buy from. So it's probably a lot easier for him as the hardware guy to know, well, there's these chipsets available, which means they could do X, Y, Z based on their other form factors. It would just be common sense for them to do that. And sure enough, a lot of times that's correct.
Yeah, I mean, I used to keep up with all that stuff too, like what merchant hardware can do what, and what they have to punt a CPU. But now basically I just listen to what Thrift says and I cross-reference that with what Kevin Myers says, and where there's overlap, it's pretty much gospel.
Yeah, keeping up with that stuff does not spark joy with me. I've definitely let that go. For people that like have some kind of weird little thing in their brain where they love figuring that stuff out, it's like, more power to you, bud. Just share the love, and thankfully those guys are willing to do all of that stuff.
Yeah, it's very much a surround yourself with smart people kind of thing for me. Like I don't care, I don't care to keep up on the hardware, but somebody else will, and then I can reference it.
Enough bandwidth. But there's a lot of important things with this too. It's like people are already making jokes. Well, now it's going to be Router OS version 8, but the big picture here is they've probably doubled or tripled their development team size in general. They just pushed towards stabilizing version 7. Yeah. Once they work the kinks out, like all these things have new engines in the background. There's more like multi-threaded processes in the operating system in general. It's just all around better, but it was completely rebuilt, so there's going to be bugs. But even if you don't like MikroTik, I mean, I love MikroTik, but they're going to force the big vendors to compete as well. Like more and more companies are offering virtualized images for routing to push more into like white box open networking stuff. And so having someone like MikroTik just kind of ramp up and take off like out of nowhere is going to force a lot of the bigger companies to offer some sort of similar price point, feature sets, virtual machines, or, you know, they're going to take over a bunch of market share because it's like the price point, it's like worth dealing with some of the weird stuff than having to pay for huge support contracts. And so if you start offering port density, it's a lot more friendly to like walk into, you know, that capacity of networking. And like I said, their team is as big as ever. So this progress probably isn't going to stop. They're just going to keep ramping things up. They're probably going to bring Docker back soon, and it's just going to keep going and going and going. And who knows what it's going to look like a year from now. And they are held back a little bit on chip shortages. Once that's gone, we're probably going to see new hardware flood the market from MikroTik. It's pretty exciting whether people want to keep ragging on it or not. This is a different MikroTik than it was, you know, within even the last year. They've ramped up so much development resources. They're making pretty serious changes.
Yeah, I think that they've also, well, they've got a couple of different things within that, right? They got the new kernel. The new kernel is a game changer, right? Because the other one in 6 was so painfully old that like there was no upgrade path for a lot of different things that needed fixed. So now that they've presumably built a modular system that they can drop new kernels into more easily, you know, I think that's only going to accelerate. And, you know, what are they going to do while they're waiting for new hardware? They're going to work on their software stack. And I think they've more embraced the, you know, the open source protocol stuff too. I think they used to try to write everything in-house, and now they've got a bigger team. And, you know, why not take advantage of something that's already written? You know, FRR's got a ridiculous protocol suite that's open source. You know, all you have to do is reference it, you know, put the licenses in and you can use it. But they've got that MPLS stack too, which, you know, talk about competing with the big vendors. Like, find me something else that does MPLS as well, you know, for virtual circuits or whatever, you know, VPLS in particular. Find me something that'll do it for, you know, 2/3 the price. Even, I mean,
yeah,
there is nothing. There's literally nothing out there unless you're going to build your own FRR box.
Yeah, I mean, it really feels like MikroTik had like an albatross around their neck, or you know, the old kernel was like a boat anchor dragging them down. And now that they've freed themselves, right, they've rewritten from the ground up all the pieces that they needed to. They are thrusting themselves forward at warp speed. I mean, you could see all the new features and things, not just the ones that we had been complaining about for years, like please fix this thing. Obviously those are here already, like we're realizing those changes, but new stuff that we didn't even ask for, like Docker, you know, and then the cake and Codal, and you know, all that stuff is just coming out, just gangbusters, is coming out so fast. So I'm hoping that they see the mistakes they've made in the past and they're going to take steps for the future to where they don't get stuck, right? Like we don't accidentally get stuck somehow on version 7 for the next 5-6 years, right? I mean, in the same way that they were on 6, right, where it was really hindering them. And like Arellano said, they've really ramped up. Like you said, you know, if there's chip shortages, they're just going to work on software. And it looks like, you know, if they have enough resources now that looking towards the software piece should never slow down. Right? Like they've got people that can just focus on that piece, and then they've got people that can focus on the hardware piece or whatever it happens to be. So, I mean, I feel like they're really poised and positioned to do some amazing stuff. And it's not just me feeling high off of not having to go to work for 2 weeks. Like I really feel like, you know, like good things are in the pipe. So I'm excited about it.
Yeah, I think the other thing that no one really talks about, because like, in the world where people are using MikroTik a lot, it's just kind of, well, yeah, of course it's low power, but like for a lot of folks, like that's becoming significantly more important. The power draw, I mean, there's nothing else in the market that will do, even close to what a MikroTik device does with power draw that it'll draw. It's incredible how little power it'll use to be able to do the things that it can do. And I think that's a very understated advantage that they've got. That, I mean, they don't really. It's just like, yeah, of course it's low power, right? But like in the U.S., that's we don't think about that as much, right? Because we've got a stable power grid for the most part. But like elsewhere in the world, like where are you going to find? I mean, I remember when 100 gig blades came out, and like you go to like a facility, level 3 facility or whatever, right? Whatever the facility is, doesn't matter who the carrier was. There was a chance they wouldn't have enough power for you to hand you to feed those 500 gig line cards that you had that required all new power supplies in your router. Didn't exist yet. You had to wait like 6 months for them to upgrade the power system in the data center to do that.
Yeah.
So
and I guess too, like
advantage.
while we're talking about low power draw, that makes me think of how high of temperature tolerances these things can manage. And so they're putting out low power. You can put them in a hot environment, they're not going to add that much to the heat. So I've put them in places where you absolutely shouldn't have put them, so they really are good in those kind of rough industrial environments or, kind of outdoor environments. Interesting little tidbits I wouldn't have even noticed. Well, we were talking about earlier, or it slipped out or whatever it happens to be, whether it was pre-recording, but we talked about cake a little bit. And there's no one central place where all of that knowledge has been put together, it doesn't seem like. But Tommy Krogan was nice enough to compile all of the notes on cake. That guy's been hammering at it for, I think, pretty much since it was released. He's been whacking away at it, and he's got some good notes he's put together as well as some base configs. And I just wanted to get a shout out that in the show notes, there's going to be a link to all that stuff. And so you were mentioning it a little bit earlier, right, Braglio?
Yeah, so I've had a Starlink node for, I don't know, since March of last year. Not because I live in a rural area, but because I got on the list and I wanted to test it, to do some research on latency and buffer bloat and some other things. And one of the last things that I want to test is how the behavior changes when I can enable FQCODL or cake on a MikroTik that's connected directly to a dish, a Starlink dish, because there's some pretty serious buffer bloat issues with the original dish nodes that pretty much everybody has right now, and I have a feeling that will fix that problem. But I haven't been able to test it yet because I'm too lazy to sit down and figure it out. And the place that I usually go to get my MikroTik config, which is gregsoul.com, doesn't have anything on cake.
Lies.
So,
it's because I'm waiting for, I don't have good little test networks anymore. Everything is full-blown production. Everybody's got a little piece of their network where they can just I can do this stuff over here. It's not going to hurt anything. But the ones I have now, they're my networks and they're making me money. So it's I don't want to disturb them too much. So I've been kind of waiting for somebody else to do some of the heavy lifting so I can be a little bit safer when I go in there. I don't want to, especially this time of year, I don't want people bitching and moaning at me this time of year. I don't want to take any phone calls. So I'm not playing with it right at the moment. But Tommy was kind enough to get out there. I've never implemented those types of systems. And I wonder, do you have to tweak and tune them a little bit to your environment? It's not one size fits all, right?
Well, so the big selling point of FQCODL is that you enable it and it works, right? And if you look at the Linux documentation for it, there's really nothing to it, right? It essentially adapts as it needs to. That's the thing I don't know on a MikroTik. I guess I could just go turn it on and see what it does. I just haven't done it yet. And speaking of networks to do things on, that's my home network. So
gotcha.
My family is the test subjects, and they're very vocal when things don't work. So, I get really good and prompt feedback.
Awesome. How about you, Arellano? I know you guys are the network you maintain. That would be useful for you guys, right?
Maybe. The hardest part for me was that when people were first testing this, like Cake specifically was causing like kernel panics and stuff. It's like, I don't know if I want to play with that right now. I mean, I've looked at FQ Codal and stuff a little bit. I mean, the idea of having lots of small mini queues, being able to make sure that like latency sensitive smaller window things get equal priority. Like the whole thing is like, yeah, I want to use it, but I haven't had time to actually test it and play around with it. It looks simple enough configuration wise. I think a lot of it's being done on the Linux side of things. I specifically haven't tried Cake because of all the complaints earlier with kernel panics and routers crashing, just having it on for some reason. It's probably fixed by now, but that's the primary reason I haven't even touched Cake. But now things are stabilizing. It's probably going to be interesting to test. I mean, it can only help. And if it doesn't cause kernel panics, why not? At some point, I definitely will play with it.
Say, maybe here maybe in the first quarter, what I'll do is I'll pick a floor and I'll just throw it on that floor. Like I'll just affect that one level of customers and see if I get any complaints back. maybe I'll holler at the department management and I'll say, hey, I'm testing out some new systems over on floor 5. So just let me know if you guys hear anything. So we'll see. That gives me kind of an out in case I break everything. They'll be like, oh, everything. Oh, but he told us. And I'm like, yeah, okay, we're all good. Nobody's mad at me right now. Excellent. All right. So let's move on to something I am just now been toying with, but you guys are consummate experts on, which is ZeroTier. So a friend of mine called me Tuesday of last week. Anyway, they picked a day. They called me and they said, hey, we've got our 3 chicken finger stores. Like they said, there's like one of the most popular chicken finger joints down here. And they've got 3 locations in town. They're like, hey, we just failed our PCI compliance. For some reason this year they made us do a scan. And I was like, are you processing your credit cards digitally? And they're like, yeah. I was like, how long have you been doing that? And they're like, I don't know, 8 years or so. I was like, well, you got away with it for a long time. You should have been doing this ages ago. So what'd they send you? And so we ended up, oh my gosh, it's a typical sort of thing where they did everything. So one location they had a Netgear, at another location they had, oh my gosh, I think a TP-Link, and at another one they had like a unified gate. It's just a hodgepodge, like you would expect, just all kinds of weird stuff. So switched it out for MikroTiks, and I wanted to play with the new hotness, the ZeroTier, right? It's supposed to be so simple, and to be honest, I ran into problems. I know there's only 2 lines of config on a MikroTik that you have to throw in there. But what I was trying to do is in the controller interface of ZeroTier, I was trying to put in like I went to the advanced section. I put in my custom subnet that I wanted to throw in there, and I put in the range and everything. And it wasn't auto assigning them. And so I tried manually assigning them in the controller, and they would never pull the addresses. And I was like, okay. I went back to easy mode, picked one of the subnets they had, and everything just magically worked. I was like, all right, well, maybe I did something wrong. I mean, there's like almost no knobs in there, which is super cool, like how easy they make it. But now that I've got it up just using one of their subnets, it is so simple. You really do just enable like 2 lines. Basically, you turn on ZeroTier on the MikroTik, that you configure the interface where you just put the network ID for your ZeroTier stuff, and it just reaches out and magic happens. It's so simple. And then even the app on my Android phone, there's just the little slider, you click it and it turns on, and then I can access all of their internal resources, which is like, so they had their point of sale system open to the internet, HTTP, so that they could go in there and correct time cards and stuff. I was like, oh my God, you're giving me, you're giving me anxiety. And then they had their DVRs, which were all 3 different brands of DVRs, of course, connected wide open to the internet. I was like, that is the absolute worst thing you can have on there. And I was like, oh, by the way, your cameras, are they on the same network as your point of sale stuff? And they're like, yeah. I was like, oh, okay, well, let's take care of that, because your point of sale and your cameras are wide open to the internet and they're all sitting on the same network. Oh, so so we got that fixed. And ZeroTier was like the easy button. It really was. It was like Fisher Price of VPNs. You just kind of blop and you're done.
If you want to use it as a layer 2 switch, it's super easy. But the best part is, like, if you want to go crazy, you can go crazy. You can spin up multiple isolated networks. There's a very complex rules engine that has a simplified syntax on top of it. You can control to the ether type level, the protocol level. You can tag devices in specific groups. It's like anything you can think of, you could potentially build in there. I mean, they've got a whole bunch of cool stuff on the back end to deal with encapsulation. Like you can do like large MTU sizes. It handles it in the protocol. It's amazing for what.
It's incredible, dude. It's just there's no other way to describe it. It's freaking incredible. Like it does. You don't have to know anything at all to make it work, or you can be like a protocol super freak and do all the things you want to do with it, and it works anywhere in between. Like it's freaking incredible. I've been using it for years. I use it for everything, and it's, I like to use it just as a layer 2 switch for some things, and for other things, I'm doing all kinds of crazy rules and stuff over it. Like it reminds me a lot, and I know I'm going to date myself here, but it reminds me a lot of like when we were first figuring out how to do open flow stuff. And I know that's going to color it, because it's controller based or whatever, but like it's very different than that. It's essentially, allows you to do all that complex filtering at the port level, the virtual port level that you could do with things like OpenFlow, but it doesn't have any of the downsides, right? It does, you can do a managed session or unmanaged session. You can, do no rules. You can do a ridiculous amount of rules. I can't say enough.
So it's not.
I love it.
I mean, initially when you think like it's a VPN or something like that, you think, oh, I'm just going to use this for like some light remote admin, right? Like so I can backdoor into my devices and configure them. And yes, it does do that, and it does a good job of that. But like you said, it goes so much farther, not just like layer 2, but you're using it to do like OSPF sessions across with like BGP peerings, and you're doing some complex stuff, right?
Let me tell you a little story. So I've been thinking about how to do more network experimentation for quite a while. That part of what I do is network research, and so there's a certain point where doing things in a lab just doesn't give you the kind of return that you need for seeing how something works and seeing how something fails. And so I sat down over the summer and cobbled together some real resources, like a real ASN. I got allocated some IPv6 space from Aaron, and then later on a /24. And I started building what I called ZTVI. So ZT for ZeroTier and VI, just Roman numeral for 6, because it was originally v6 only network. And basically what it is it's a carrier backbone, with real resources that exists entirely as an overlay. So from a given POP, let's say I've got a POP here in where I live in Champaign-Urbana, Illinois. I have an FRR router, free range routing device that is, basically just a Linux box. I have ZeroTier installed on it, and I create backbone links via ZeroTier. So I create a backbone link from this POP to the next POP over, right? And I just configure it like I would a normal backbone link. I run a /127 on it, I run a /31 on it, and I run ISIS over that for my IGP, and then I do IBGP over that. In some cases I do OSPF because, why not? There's no rules, right? I can do one or the other, and it runs totally fine. Like the routing and the performance of that is limited only by the speed of the physical interfaces that are plugged in. So right now everything is 1 gig, except for one location that has 10 gig to an IX. And I can run from my house, which has 1 gig, fiber to it. I can run pretty darn close to 1 gig, all transiting through ZeroTier over that network. I can pop it in at my house and pop it out in, California, and it looks like 2 hops, right? Doesn't matter what's underneath it because it's just FRR. And so as the network can change underneath that, whatever carriers I'm peering with, because I've got egress eBGP peers, their routes can be churning, their transits can be changing. It doesn't I can't see any of that. I mean, it's basically a big overlay network, and it's all running over ZeroTier.
All right. So one thing you mentioned was FRR. Tell me a little bit about FRR. Kind of how people use it. What does it do?
Yeah, FRR is basically what if anyone's used a project called Quagga, basically an open source routing suite. It's been forked out of Quagga. It's maintained mostly by Cumulus, which is now NVIDIA. And it's essentially a software routing stack that's very, very full-featured and very progressive. So it has all the things like SRv6 and all these funky new protocols. And it just runs under Linux, or I run it under Linux, just an Ubuntu install. I just install FR on top of it, drop into a shell. It looks pretty much exactly like traditional iOS. If I add other people to it to manage it, I just make their shell the VTYSH, and it just looks like they're logging into a router. Just drops them right into the command line interface of the router, and they can configure everything that they want to do from there. And so that was the main platform that we went with to build this network. But then we ended up getting access to a cabinet in Fremont, California, in a Hurricane Electric data center. And one of the requirements was that it had, an actual router. So we bought a 2004 MikroTik, and that's the production 7.11 device that's now participating in the network. And it's got the ZeroTier interfaces that it routes its quote unquote backbone links over. The one caveat is that device does not do ISIS. So it's currently the OSPF node in the network, and we just do redistribution. It's real easy.
So while we're talking about ZeroTier on MikroTik, it only runs on ARM-based devices. So it doesn't run on x86. It's not in CHR, which hopefully it gets there because that would be really cool. And it's also CLI only, right? There's nothing in the there's nothing in Wimbox. I think it's an extra package, right? You have to pull the ZeroTier package in and reboot, and there it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. And a couple other things. There's no SNMP OIDs for the interfaces either. So if you're graphing stuff, which I just found out like 2 days ago, if you're graphing things, you're not going to see currently any traffic statistics for those.
I would believe it, because like if you look in Wimbox in the interfaces, it doesn't exist. Like even though ZeroTier is up, it's functioning, it's connected. You can go to IP address and it shows it, but it's like asterisk and a number. There's no interface. So I assume that's probably like all of that's going to get kind of married together once they get it to show up in Wimbox, right? The OIDs are going to be there and all that stuff. So hopefully they keep putting time and attention into this, because I started out looking at WireGuard and I was like, maybe I can get them on WireGuard to do their VPN stuff. And then I was like, what's that other thing? Oh yeah, ZeroTier. Let me look at that. And it was so much simpler. So, I mean, it just came together really quick. The smartphone app was really simple as well. And I just like the controls. Like I can send somebody the ID, they'll connect it on their smartphone and they'll pop up and I can approve them in the list and name them, and then they're up and working. So it makes it really simple on the admin side for me, like managing who does what or whatever. You were talking at some point about the API. Have you played with the API yet at all?
I have.
Yeah. Have you? Oh, see, I haven't touched that yet. I was hoping that you would write everything up.
It's pretty comprehensive. I mean, the nice thing about ZeroTier, because not only is it controller based, even though the controller is ugly, but everything's API controllable. Everything is reachable. The rules and everything you can write with the API, so you could build your own thing on top of it. But I mean, one of the things that we didn't really talk about too is that the connectivity between the nodes in ZeroTier form peer-to-peer connections if possible, which is kind of insane.
Right.
So not only is it free for 50 nodes and then really cheap for more than that, but those nodes can be routers that share routes. But they, as best as they can, with a bunch of different mechanisms, and there's a bunch of testing that ZeroTier does, things form peer-to-peer meshing. So like you're not going through their controller, you're not depending on their infrastructure other than turn up of connections. So like once it's off to the races and all the connections are formed between the devices, everything's peer-to-peer. And it sounds like they're adding some extra functionality as far as encryption options, which will be leveraged in actual like hardware encryption ASIC chips. But there's a bunch of other functionality that not everything has support for. Like they've got options for like bonding interfaces across different like multipath. I mean, there's like all different kinds of cool things that are in the documentation that, I mean, MikroTik, you just turn it on, but I'm sure at some point you could do a lot of interesting things where you could over ZeroTier bond different internet connections with varying different bandwidths and do all kinds of crazy things. But the API's good.
Oh yeah, for sure you can do that.
That'd be cool. That'd be interesting. So when you go to hotels, you can create a bunch of virtual access points, connect them all, and then ZeroTier them back to someplace and pump up that bandwidth.
Yeah. So the other thing that that we should probably mention is we talked about the controller for this. There are people that either don't want to or can't, for compliance reasons, use cloud services like that. I know there's a lot of apprehension to having a cloud service that can, in theory, sort of touch your network elements. It's actually very trivial to run your own controller. The ZTVI project runs its own. Like I spun up a virtual machine that sits, it sits in the cloud, because I don't want that to be inside the network it needs to control, because then you have a race condition. But, I have a system that sits out on a service that I pay for that runs its own controller, and you can totally isolate it if you really want to. The documentation is really good for building your own, and there are a couple packages you can just get and install. It literally takes like 10 minutes and you're done.
Nice. How about redundancy? Is it easy to do? Like if you're doing the self-hosted, is adding the redundancy piece to the controller? Have you looked at that?
I have just started looking at that. There are ways to do that where you basically create your own moons, or maybe it's your own planet and then you have your own moons. So everything is celestial based in how they reference it. So like there are ways to completely decouple it and run your own and have it all be redundant and everything. I haven't gotten.
Have you done upgrades on the server yet? Is that pretty straightforward?
Yep. Yeah. So when you do an upgrade, I did notice that the links. So when ZeroTier restarted on the controller, my links did flap. So having a redundant controller for if you're going to do something like this in production would be more or less a requirement. But if you use the cloud service, like you can get away with 50, like you said, 50 nodes for free. For most people, that's going to be enough, and it's pretty inexpensive.
Yeah, for sure. Say you have a couple of locations, and then everybody's a road warrior. I mean, I don't know too many like regular organizations that need like more than that. So that'd be really useful, really functional, I would think.
Yeah. The other thing is it runs on freaking everything. They've got a Linux client. They've got a Windows client, obviously, a Mac client, mobile devices. Hell, I had it running on my Synology for a while. I mean, it just has a client for
something I saw
everything.
that I liked on the WireGuard client was they had the ability to just take a picture of a QR code and it would like pull the configuration. I think that would be really cool to be able to do it. Not that I'm over here splitting hairs, right? That's not a big deal, but the interface is really simple. It's not pretty. It's not super polished, but shit, I don't care about that. It doesn't matter to me. It's really simple and functional. Yeah. So,
I think the comparison to WireGuard is one that a lot of folks make, but it's apples and oranges, right? They're both fruit, right? So there's some overlap there, but one is a mesh network and the other one is basically a whole bunch of point-to-points. And if you don't want to mess with certificates, and WireGuard makes that really, and I love WireGuard, make no mistake, I like it a lot. I'm not saying one's better than the other. I'm just saying they're different. You can do some of the same stuff with them, but they, at their core, have kind of different applications, in my opinion.
Carolano, I feel like I've been running over the top of you.
Okay, I'm just here to enjoy.
Well, the thing is, like with my setup, I can only see one person at a time, so sometimes I miss those visual cues.
I was just gonna say, like, I mean, yeah, they are different. Like, if you want a point-to-point tunnel, maybe you don't need to use ZeroTier. But another cool thing about ZeroTier is they make a software SDK. So like, they're also open source. They need to make money too, so they do host. They don't hold your hand if you want to build your own like clustered out system. It's also against their terms of service to use it for commercial uses, which is fair. But they already have this huge cluster distributed system. They just handle getting the peer-to-peer connections all up. It is mesh, so like if you connect with your phone is connecting between every individual device in a big resilient mesh. So like there's a lot of complexity there. There are different tools. There are a lot of people who also do like, a traditional like IPsec VPN or like L2TP Road Warrior setup, and they have that zero-tiered into server infrastructure to avoid the 50 limit. But I mean, sky's the limit. You can kind of do whatever you want with it. So I guess it just depends. Yeah. I do want to self-host it, especially to build a different GUI on top of it.
Yeah, I was gonna say even the first tier of pricing is really reasonable.
It's really, yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember what it was off the top of my head, but it's like $10 a month or less or something, right? So it's really affordable.
Yeah, I think that some of the self-hosted package that I'm using, like I don't have any visibility into the rules engine. It's basically I can create a network, I can add nodes to the network, I can set their routes. It's the basics. I think that the API is all still there. I haven't actually gone quite that far, but the one that they provide is, you're right, it doesn't have the sexiest. I mean, it looks like it's straight out of like 2002, but like it's responsive and it works and it's really feature complete. Whereas some of or at least the self-hosted package that I'm using took literally 10 minutes to set up, but I've lost some of those things.
For what it lacks in like style, it makes up for in simplicity because it is so simple to use. It really is. So it may not look, like a unified control interface, right? All smooth round corners and sexy, but it is so simple to use and you get up and moving quick. So that's really what took me back. It was just how just absolutely fast it comes together, and it just worked. And few things I would say in networking, but then I was going to say really just in life, few things just work, right? You just poke a couple buttons and it just works. And so this was one of those rare exceptions that really surprised me in a great way. Obviously,
I'm looking at it pretty heavily right now because I've been using IPsec with XAuth just for route push functionality, so that if you have remote workers, you don't want their VoIP and stuff going through a tunnel, because if that flaps, like their calls drop. So being able to use the XAuth extension, like in MikroTik, to push selective routes to clients, like that's the only reason I'm really using IPsec with XAuth, other than it's IPsec and it's not like another fragmented tunnel or TCP based. But you can do the same thing with ZeroTier. You can specify clients get these routes. You can also match on TCP flags, and you can say these specific hosts can only access RDP on these specific endpoints. Like it's pretty crazy. I want to deep dive into it at some point because it's probably one of those things you could never really master, just because you have complete and total control at the protocol ether type level of what's allowed, what's not allowed. Connection state flags, like is it a new connection, established connection similar to the IP table style, like MikroTik firewall. But it can get as granular, insecure, and complex as you want. And it's just writing some rules, and none of it's managed on the clients.
Yeah.
So it'll just like update the rules and like traffic's allowed and not allowed.
Yeah, and to your point, like adding a route inside the controller, like if you just like not even touching the rules engine and all that stuff, you just wanted to add a route, there's a box that says destination subnet and then gateway. You just fill those two things in and then click like save, and it's just done. And it pushes that out to the clients. It's like, oh my gosh, it's like so stupid simple. It really is crazy easy.
And it's immediate too. The other thing that it does that, some people probably don't care about this, but this is huge for me, is that I can operate it in a completely free of IPv4. So my clients don't need IPv4. The controller doesn't need IPv4. I can put IPv4 inside of it if I want to, but I don't need to. I can put only IPv6, or I can just use it as an Ethernet link. But that's a big one for me, because I am more and more operating in a IPv4 free environment, or IPv4 as a service kind of ecosystem. And so that one was a big one for me. And it's been like that ever since I can remember. Like all the rules, everything just is equal across both protocol stacks, which is really, really refreshing.
So that takes me back to ZTVI, right? ZTVI.org, which is a nice short URL. That's really cool. But you said it's basically a massive overlay network built on ZeroTier. To what end? Like, what was the point? Are you just conquering worlds to see if you could do it?
Well, sort of. I mean, that's always in my nature. But basically, I wanted a environment that had no rules, that was outside of a sandbox, that I could do whatever I wanted with and experiment with some of these protocols, like say SRv6, right, in the wild, in production, quote unquote production, and really just kind of expand my lab, because I've had a lab in my house for 20 years, more than 20 years, since before I was married. And, at some point, building things virtually just loses, you hit a ceiling, right? Like, how do I move real traffic around with this? Like, okay, now I can do it. So that was really the goal, like just to build this ecosystem that myself and other folks, that were helping me build it could experiment with, and, in a safe place that, doesn't have any rules. Like if I want to run, RIP on it, I'm going to go turn it on, right? Nobody's going to tell me not to, because it's mine. So that was really the goal. Like, I've always wanted something like this, and it just all kind of fell into place over the past summer, and it was shockingly easy to get the resources to do it. And so we got 3 core nodes and 2 sort of subordinate core egress nodes they're pay transit. So basically they never transit any traffic because it's expensive. But really, I'm looking just to expand it at this point. Like anybody that's willing to transit my AS for, a gigabit or 500 megabits, it very rarely uses any traffic. It's really more about the protocols than anything else. But, I'm looking for that. It's a research project, right? There's no profit involved. It's all basically paid for out of my pocket. And another guy, the co-host of my podcast, he and I have paid for pretty much all of it out of pocket. So it's not like a.
So you're still looking for new nodes, new endpoints to pop in?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to have some stuff in Europe, Australia, New Zealand, or more we don't have anything on the East Coast in the US. We have nothing in Canada. Basically anywhere that's willing to transit our AS for V4 and V6. I mean, we could do one or the other. I'd prefer if it's both, but we'll take what we can get. Beggars can't be choosers, and then give us a VM, or we'll ship you a MikroTik to put in, and then.
What kind of MikroTiks is it? All 2004s? Is that what you're going with?
So we only have one right now, and it's a 2004. I think because we wanted more 10 gig interfaces, we went with that one. But I think if I was going to do another node that didn't have a full cabinet attached to it, I'd probably just send like a 4011 or maybe even a 3011. It doesn't need to have horsepower, right? It just needs to be able to take the routes and
well,
do
a half AC
ZeroTier.
Squared seems to pull it. I mean, that's what I've read it on. I don't know that it's going to do well with like a full table or anything like that. But yeah, I smell what you're cooking. Yeah,
I probably won't like
but
that.
You want some more international stuff. We have some international listeners. So you said the requirements are just give us a VM, or we'll ship you a router, or does it need to be? Your main focus is IPv6, right? You want them to have V6 connectivity.
Yeah. Yeah, V6 connectivity, and if it takes me or Chris, the guy Chris Cummings, helping you set that up, we'll do that. Like, you want some you want some free V6 consulting? We'll trade you that for a transiting RAS for a nominal amount of traffic. It's something like I said, it's a passion project for me. Like, I've been the V6 weirdo in the basement since like 2002. So now I'm
you need to stop
finally out
pigeonholing yourself. You're just the weirdo.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
So really,
I'll
you're
own
building
that.
Dark Web 2.0 is what you're doing.
Except for it's all public.
Yeah.
It's all PI space. It's the I don't know. I was gonna say the light web, but that's stupid.
You need to go look and see if that's trademarked yet.
Oh god.
It could be nothing but
Somebody
like
come after me.
religious websites on the light web.
Oh god.
Good times.
Yeah, that would be the
Yeah,
punk
man. You
rock
gotta go
thing
the opposite
nowadays,
direction, bro.
right?
That's cool. That's really cool. Yeah, I mean, as soon as I can get some, well, all right, you've already got transit down here, I'm sure, in Texas, but as soon as I get some V6 stuff, I'd like to pop in, because yeah, I do. I've got a whole stack of servers in there, all in our cluster, and man, have they been bored lately. So it'd be cool to throw something on there. And like I was telling you, I've got that other transit provider might be able to do V6 for me. I've got a V6 block. I just, I'm all dressed up and know where to go. So maybe that other provider would be able to do, so I could pop off of him and just do V6. Since there'll be almost no transit anyway, it'd be dirt cheap. Oh, well, all right. Sounds like I found myself a project. Ugh. I got time on my hands. Here we go.
There you go.
But you also mentioned modem.show, which is your podcast, man. So I haven't talked to you for a minute, and I just wanted to see how things been going.
It's chugging along. We're hitting. We try to do one a month. We took 2 months off in the summer, and so we were lucky in that we had done 2 in 1 month prior. So I think we hit a total of 13 for the year. The last one published for 2021. We just recorded January of 2022 that'll release some point. So, we're keeping it breezy. It's really, again, it's another labor of love. Keeps me, since I don't do operational networking anymore, it kind of forces me to go stay deep in the protocol stack, because that's really what we focus on is, deep tech type stuff, taking things apart and whatever. That's chugging along.
I'm not going to lie to you and say that I've listened to every episode, but the ones I have, are almost infuriating, because the level of polish you guys have coming out of the gates is really annoying. So you guys have, it's tremendous. You've been getting great guests, really good. You're obviously a natural storyteller and all that stuff. So I would encourage everybody listening to this to definitely go over there and give it a listen, give it a follow, like and subscribe, smash that like button. What do the kids say these days? I don't know, like, what do you say on TikTok?
I don't even know.
Or Arolano, you're on TikTok. What do kids say?
I don't know.
The only thing, my kids are sort of keeping me in the know. So now, like, my new favorite thing when I walk up and see them is to say "Bing Bong," because of the it's something like, what do they call it? It's like something crackheads. I don't know. It's like Coney Island crackheads. That's what it is. Bing Bong. You look that up. That's a great TikTok. I don't know. I mean, it's put a lot of new things in my vernacular that I'm not sure anybody else is going to understand. But when I was at that chicken finger place, I heard some of the kids in the kitchen yelling "Bing Bong" at each other. It's like, man, I am cool and hip. All right, I'm with it. Yeah.
I know nothing. I've somehow managed to keep TikTok out of my house. I don't. I get asked about once a month. Dad, can I install TikTok? Nope. Why not? Well, because the federal government says that I can't have it installed on any system that is in my house, which is made up. But whatever.
Sure.
It works.
All right. While we're here, it is technically we're actually recording this one early. I guess I'll probably release it early. I mean, why wait? Just do the thing. Although I have had people complain when we put out too many too fast. They're like, I've got it so that yours bump up to the top and you're annoying me because I'm tired of hearing your voice. So you need to space them out. But having said that, we're coming up on the end of the year. We're doing this one again early because Saturday will be New Year's Day. And so, it's like, do your thing, live your life. Don't waste your time doing this thing with me. So it was much easier to convince you guys here, but it always brings up the idea of resolutions. I'm not a resolutioner. Like, I never do that. So I basically, like, if I decide I want to do something, I just do it in any time of the year. I don't care, honestly, because if I want to do something, I do it now. One, because I'll forget, and two, it's like I don't wait on things anymore, right? Like, I've done that so many times in my life where I keep putting it off, keep waiting. And I've had too many opportunities gone, right? Like you lose a family member, you lose a friend, and it's like, why did I wait on that thing? So I've taken that to heart in multiple aspects of my life. So I'm not necessarily a resolutioner, but some folks are. Maybe there's something you're looking forward to the next year that you want to like accomplish or conquer. Apparently, Nick wants to take over or Braglio wants to take over the world with his ZTVI. So, one country at a time. So that way he gets a good back door so he can circumvent the nation's firewall, to fully perform his attacks. Or no, wait, he's going to start a religion that punches through everybody's national firewalls. That's what it is, because it's a light web, right? So you're going to start a cult, modem.show. Be sure to tithe, don't forget. But yeah, do you guys have any resolutions or anything like that? I'm just curious. It's like, it's that time of year. It's always sort of a fun topic.
I don't do resolutions. It's not my thing. I'm like you. If I want to do something, I just do it. And like you, I would probably also forget, like you said you would do. So I just try to do it now and whatever else. I should also mention that I am actually ordained in the Church of the Dude. So it could be a religion. I think I also have universal life.
I'm a minister at the Universal Life Church
somebody,
as well. But... Did you get ordained to perform a wedding? Yeah, me too.
Yeah. And I was also the photographer, which was really strange because there was only 5 people there. 2 of them were getting married, me, like a parent on either side. And I also had the camera.
I could just imagine. Do you? Click. Do you? Yeah, there we go. Got him. All right, Arolano, what are your resolutions?
To sleep more and I don't know, focus on being happier.
Mm. So
maybe taking in some ZeroTier telemetry units for the Borg network.
Is that what we're calling the religion? I mean, I don't know that we get to make up the name. I guess that's Braglio's job is to...
I know they're all telemetry collectors. That's what the whole point of the project is, right? Sniffing packets across the globe.
There is some notion of collecting, NetFlow data, just normal stuff, right? But that's only to make sure that it works. Like, there's no, I am a very staunch believer that a service provider network should not look at packets or filter packets that aren't detrimental to the network. So it's a FIFO pipe, right? Packets in, packets out.
Gotcha. So for every $100 you tithe, you get 1 vote into, what the network is used for. That's what I'm hearing.
And it's a minimum. That's the minimum tithing is $100.
Well, I mean, percentage or $100, whichever you hit first. Is that the idea? Gotcha.
Yeah,
we're working on the fine print, folks. Give him a little time. He'll get it all out there. All right. Well, is there anything else
we'll figure it out.
Burning you guys up that you need to talk about? Because that's all the stuff that I could regurgitate out of my head to think to talk about.
I got nothing else. That seems like a pretty good place.
Yeah, so we moved a lot of ground too, which is always fun. All right.
I should also say, I'll make one more comment. Not really a new topic, but you did say that modem.show was very polished. I take 0 credit for that. That is 100% Chris Cummings. He has like a recording studio worth of stuff and all the software. And so basically he's like, buy this mic and buy this software for for your machine, and then editing all happens like magic happens at his house. So he gets
That's the
100% of the
dream.
credit for that. The goal is to make it sound like an NPR.
You guys
broadcast.
are well on your way there. That's the dream, man. Just I show up, I talk on a mic, I drop it, and then I walk away. I love that.
That's pretty much what I do. The times that I have done the editing, he's gone back and done it again.
Oh well. Yeah, that's fine. That's like you do the laundry wrong one time, and then you never have to do the laundry again. Yeah, somebody else does it.
I'm totally fine with that. I've not figured that out at home though.
All right. Well, I will say let's do the send off. So Nick Braglio, if folks out on the internet want to get a hold of you, how would you have them do that?
Oh, I'm on the Twitters, forwarding plane. There's the forwardingplane.net blog, of course, modem.show and ZTVI.org, and I'm in the Brothers Wisp Slack as well. So just at me in there, and it'll buzz my machine, and I'll get. Sometimes I'm slow, but I always get
just
back
recently at like a tech field day or whatever it is. Didn't you guys just do one of those?
Yeah, we did the very first tech field day for service providers. So there's a handful of us that got invited to go. It was not in person, but yeah, I just did that like
one of the chosen ones.
3 weeks
So
ago,
there's
like
a
that.
lot of materials that get produced via that, right?
Something. Yeah. We did a modem show that was kind of a recap of what the themes were.
No big deal. Whatever. All right. There's one of a few guys invited to that. Yeah. Way to flex on us, bro. All right, Nick Arolano.
I was easily the dumbest
Nick
one. Nick
Arolano, if folks want to interact with you out on the internet, how would you have them do that?
You can join the Brothers Wisp Slack group. We need more patrons, so jump in there. And then nick.a@hey.com.
Nick.a@hey.com. I like that. Kind of rolls off the tongue. You can find me at greg@gregsoul.com, where I answer emails because that's my email address. And then gregsoul.com, I do the blogging stuff semi-regularly. Obviously I've fallen off the wagon the last, like 2 weeks because I haven't been doing anything, which is nice, man. It's nice to recharge, but I'm kind of, getting the itch to start like moving, like getting back in motion. So I'll probably start blogging again a little bit. Maybe on some of the ZeroTier stuff because I just like it and it's fun. And then I can go back and reference it once I forgot how all of it works. But let's see what else. You can find me at patreon.com/brotherswisp. I'm on the Slack. I'm pretty responsive there, especially to DMs and stuff like that. But really, you don't go there for me. You go there for these lovely gentlemen that are so free with their knowledge and information. So definitely go in there, find us, visit Braglio, visit Arolano. God, you guys have very similar last names too. It's kind of they end in O. I don't know. Maybe it's not so similar. Anyway, I digress. You guys have any questions, comments, guests? Everybody's going to tell me, please bring Braglio. We need more Arolano. So, yeah, I know that part. That's fine. You don't have to send me that. But any guests or any comments, questions, or anything like that, let us know. So thank you guys for listening. Thank you, Nick Squared, for joining today.
A good one.
I'm going to hit.
I'm telling you, you don't know what you are missing. Ideas and some good comedy.